Okay, so now we're going to look at the most important personal safety equipment, which is the life vest. And today all life vests that are used in these conditions are normally inflatable. This means that it's comfortable to wear, but when you fall into the water it will inflate, and it will be a safety equipment that will keep your head above water even if you're lost your conscience. So how does this work? Well, there's a lung inside here which will inflate when you fall into the water automatically, or you can also manually inflate your vest. And how does this work? Well, there are some things inside in the mechanism that you really need to check. And this cartridge here containing CO2, which will inflate the vest. And it's very important, I have to stress that you check that it's tightly attached to the automatic mechanism down here. So you need to really check that it's tightened here, because if it's not tightened, it's starting to getting up here. It might not inflate automatically when you fall into the water, because the mechanism won't reach the bottle with the CO2 inside. The automatic mechanism is this black cartridge. It could also look different in different brands of vests, but it's always the same. There's something inside here when it gets in contact with water that will inflate the vest. Important to check, because this one has a date, an expiry date, and it's very important that this one, the expiry date, is not overdue. If it is, you need to buy another one and replace this one. These vests, which are supposed to be for races in category 3, they should also have a spray hood, which is this hood here. When you're in the water, you can pull it over your head, so you will not get, when the waves fall over you, you will not have a lot of water inside your mouth with the help of this one. And on the other side, or somewhere in the vest, you will also have an emergency light, which in this vest is on this side. This small box here, which you can test, and it should flash when you test it. And an important thing about this one is that it also has an expiry date, because there is of course a battery inside this device, and when the battery is about to run out, you will check, and if it has an overdue expiry date, you need to buy a new lamp, because you can't take this apart and change the battery. You need to buy an entirely new lamp. All right, and some things about the vest when it's on. The vest also contains a life harness. And it has a buckle like this. So when you have the vest on, you can use this loop and take the vest, and you can lift the person out of the water with the assistance of this life harness. And this loop here is the one you use when you attach your safety line. There are different kinds of safety lines, and I will explain a little bit about that. But this one, as you can see, it has got 3 hooks. And here's another one, which has got 2 hooks. And there are also a third version, which has 1 hook and a textile loop in the other end. And you will attach your hook or your loop, if there's one of those lines, to the vest like this. And then you can fasten yourself in the boat so that you will not fall overboard. And how this works when you're on deck working, I'll show you in a minute, right? If you do have this safety line, which has only 1 hook and instead the textile loop here, you put your textile loop in the loop of the life vest, and you have 2 loops together. And if the most dangerous situation should appear, that you're attached with your hook to the boat and the boat is going down and you're unable to detach your hook, then you have 2 choices. Either go down with the boat, or you have to lose the vest, and then you're in the water without a life vest, which is not a preferable situation, of course. So you also have to have then somewhere in your equipment a knife, a really sharp knife, for instance like that, where the edges looks like that, and then you can cut the safety line so that you can get away from the boat without being towed down together with the boat. So if you have a safety line with only 1 hook and instead the textile loop in that end, which sits in your vest, you need to be able to cut your safety line, and then you need to have a really sharp knife, preferably with an edge looking like that. All right, so now I'm up on deck on John's boat here, and I'm going to show you how to use these hooks and why it might look like it does on my vest here. But first you need to check that you have this jack stay, which is this textile band down here, and this should be safely attached at both ends of the boat, and also very, very tightened. You must make it as tight as you can, and when you think you've done it as tight as possible, tighten it again, because this needs to be really tight. Because if I raise now and lift the band, you still see, even this is very well tightened, it's still you can lift it. So tighten, tighten and tighten again. All right, so this is where you have your safety hooks attached when you move around on the deck, like that. So if you fall overboard, this jackstay and the safety line will still keep you beside the boat. Even if you fall over, you will still be just beside the boat, and the crew can pick you up again. And why is it good to have two parts of this safety line with hooks? Because if you reach an obstacle on deck where the jackstay is tightened, you can take your second hook and you can attach on the other side of the obstacle, and you can detach yourself from here. You can pass the obstacle and continue, and then you can again attach the longer line if that's more convenient. And that also brings me to why do you have different length on these parts of the safety band? Because if you have if you're going to do some work by the mast or somewhere else, you can secure yourself with the short part of the safety line, and then you won't fall so far if you lose your if you slip with your feet. And the longer one is to have it easier to move around. So this is for staying at place when working on deck, and this is for making it easier to move around on the deck. That's why, and also this with two hooks, you can pass an obstacle along the jackstay. Okay, so here we have some additional safety equipment that you're supposed to have in your boat. You have a life buoy, and this one should be able to just throw overboard. If you have a man overboard situation, you will never know if the vest is going to inflate, so that person might need something else to assist them floating while you turn the boat back to save them. So this one you should just throw into the water immediately when a man overboard situation occurs. And to work during the night, this of course needs to have a light which follows the buoy, and also a sea anchor which will in some way prevent this buoy for just drifting away in the wind. So a sea anchor, a light and the buoy. When you get close to the person in the water and you should get them back on board, you use a rescue sling, which is what's inside this pipe here. So this is something you throw to the person in the water when the boat is close, so you can put it around yourself, and then you have lines here, and you can also use your winches on board to get the person up. Since the person, a fully grown man with his clothes full of water, could be like 150, 180 kilos, so it's hard to lift just with your arms, your hand power. Here's another version of a line that you can throw to someone in the water, an emergency line. So this is equipment that you need to have in the boat immediately beside here and ready to throw into the water. And if you get some water getting inside the boat, what do you need? You need an electrical bilge pump, which is somewhere in the boat, picking up the water and pumping it out. You also need to have a manual bilge pump that will work in case of loss of electrical power in the boat. And you also might need one or several buckets to be able to bilge out the water from inside the boat. If you have like 2 or 3 of these, you could have 2 persons, one down there filling the bucket with water, and another one in the hatch throwing the water overboard. So automatic bilge pump, manual bilge pump, and 1 or several buckets for emergency evacuating water inside the boat. And the last thing I'd like to point out here is that you need to have one or several knives in the cockpit. Preferably somewhere here on the push pit or somewhere else, and another knife on the boom, and maybe another knife somewhere else on the boat, so that you can cut lines wherever you need. So you don't have to have your personal knife. If you don't have that one, you should be able to reach a knife at some places in the cockpit or at the boom or the mast or somewhere else, so that everybody knows that there are knives at several places in the boat. You're able to cut lines if you need to. Okay, so now we're down below deck, and what's the most important thing around here? Well, in my point of view, this is this picture on the wall, which is this stowing plan. It should tell where all the safety details in the boat down below deck are situated. So you can go around to this one and read and say, where is the fire extinguisher, where is the first aid kit, and other stuff that you might need down here. And it's also very important that the skipper actually trains his crew, and all the crew member needs to look at the stowing plan, and they need to look around that all the things that's described on the stowing plan really is situated where the stowing plan says it is. Otherwise you won't find it anyway. And what do we have down here? Well, we have the first aid kit, several versions here depending small wounds, big wounds. We have some fire extinguishers. One is down the hatch and another one is over here in this compartment here. And we also have fire blanket just beside the galley. So most of the important things, or all the important things, seems to be in place, at least in this boat here, which is very good. Down here we also have the portable VHF. An important thing, you need to have one of those, and of course it should be waterproof and preferably also buoyant, but nevertheless it's very important to have this loop which you attach around your wrist, so when you're on deck with your VHF you won't lose it overboard. And another thing, more attached to the VHF over there, the big one, you have a reserve antenna, which could look different depending on which making, which brand it is and so on, but there are some important things there. Where are you going to put it when you need it? If you lost the mast, how do you try to get this antenna as high as possible, even if you don't have the mast left? And also this attachment here from the wiring, so this one will fit into the VHF, because if it doesn't, you have no use of this. So there are some preparations that really needs to be done down here, with technical equipment, with the stowing plan, and not the least, to train the crew and let everyone look at the stowing plan, everyone look around, find all the stuff that they need, and to have what we call the crew resource management here. And some other things around safety on board also. You should have your pyrotechnical devices, which is hand flares and smoke generators. And the important thing here is that you check the expiry date. Just like the battery for the emergency lamp on your life vest, you should check the expiry date on your pyrotechnical devices. If they're too old, you leave them at the place where you buy new ones. All right, and I also like to say that you should use these protocols, which are both in English and in Swedish, and you will find them on the homepage for Gotland Runt on KSS's homepage. And there you will also find a PowerPoint presentation regarding safety on board and safety inspection, which also is another assistance for you as a skipper of a boat. You have the protocols, you have the PowerPoint presentation, and finally there's another document you might like to print and bring in the boat, which is what are you supposed to do if you have a crew member that should be picked up by a rescue helicopter. That document is very good to have, so print it, put it in a plastic pocket and bring it on board.